What is up, you guys? So I finished The Summer Girl and I started a reread. So that is what I've been up to today. Today has also been my only day off this week. And so, to be honest with you, I slept until like noon. I slept until noon. I didn't want to do anything. I was not eager to like read something that wasn't a romance, to read something that was like reading with my eyeballs. And so between you and me, it's pretty much amazing that I managed to actually find time in my day to finish The Summer Girl by Elle Kennedy. I need to let you guys know that I'm going to talk about the second book that I finished first. So in case you have, you're interested in reading The Summer Girl, I want to say spoil it for you, but I have to talk about the third act of that book, and there's no talking about the third act of that book. And it's not even like the third act. It's like literally 96% of the way through that book that we need to discuss. And obviously, at 96% of the way through, I will be revealing some things. And so I'm going to start with the book that I started second, and then I'm going to finish with The Summer Girl in case you don't want any kind of like ruining of that book or whatever. So I told you guys yesterday that I had sprints with my patrons today, which I did. I'm literally filming this directly after that. So shout out to them. But I said I wanted to read something that wasn't a romance, and I wanted to read something with my eyeballs. And my initial thought was to read one of the mini Night Alley arcs because I might have a 73% feedback ratio at this moment, 73, 74. But I have plenty of books on there, like at least 2 pages worth of books. That's like 20 books or something that I have requested that they've given me. And some of these books we have blown by the release date. We are deep into December. So I was like, I should probably, go back, pick one of them up, read that. But I just could not be bothered still. Like I was looking at the titles and I was like, none of those really sound like something I want to read right now. So I decided I should reread Yellowface by Rebecca Kwong because this was the first book that I read in 2023. I read it so long ago. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I was so excited about this book. I really enjoyed it. Again, it was like my first book of the year. And so I just want to kind of revisit it and see if it was still something that was holding up and I was going to put in my best books of the year list. And between you and me, I'm not sure the answer to that question is yes. And it's having me in a little bit of a crisis at this moment. I am 188 pages in. The book is only 319 pages. So I've read most of this tonight. And my issue with the book isn't so much that it's a bad book, because I don't think that it is. I still appreciate, I would say, 98% of the commentary that is provided in this book, the perspective of this book. I still stand by this idea that so much of the themes and the topics present in Rebecca's books have been present since the Poppy War, and each book is iterative on the one that came before it in terms of like refining the thought process and maybe focusing on one particular area over a different area. But I feel like there is a sort of narrative through line through this, even though some of these are different genres. The Poppy War is fantasy, Babel is fantasy, but it's also leaning in the academic tone. Yellowface is more of like a satire. It's a little bit over the top, but we're still, again, touching on some of the same themes. I still feel like, 4 books later now, we're still delving into these ideas of myth making and like what that is to a lot of things, obviously race. And I do think that Yellowface overall is a work that is cathartic and personal to Kwong, just having been the person that has watched every lecture and interview that she has given that is available to stream on YouTube. And so I feel like just hearing some of the things she has talked about long before the release of this book, and then some of the things that are lobbed in terms of like criticisms at Athena, like they do feel like personal and like an author working through something. And I still feel at the end of the day that it's a good book. It's not I'm reading this book and I'm going like, oh, how did I ever give this book 5 stars? I understand the Monty that gave this book 5 stars. I understand where I was in that period of my life and like what I was thinking when I was reading it. And I feel like that Monty definitely had like the better experience, because the only thing that Monty had going into this book was that it was a Rebecca Kwong book, which fresh off of Babel was something I read in 2022, and it was like my favorite book of the year. And until I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Babel was like low key my favorite book of all time. Like I was like, I'm never reading a book that's better than this. And then I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and it's just like, sit down, honey. Like sit down tomorrow, and tomorrow's here. So like it just instantly Rebecca Kwong had like gone from being an author that I appreciated and I respected and I could like see something in to this person was like, yeah, no notes, 5 out of 5, brilliant. Like, what are we doing here? Why are other authors even attempting to put pen to paper? Like, you guys never going to catch up to Rebecca. And so I feel like Yellowface was some of those same ideas and concepts, but we were present. The first time I read this book, I was just like racing to kind of get through to experience the story, to understand like what June or Juniper, whatever we want to call this lady, like I wanted to see her mind. And it was just so fascinating the first time through. But the second time through, it's a lot slower of a book, and it almost feels in some ways more like the other books that R.F. Kuang has to write something that was literary, but kind of the feel of a thriller, the pacing of like something that you can't put down, something that would allow a person who, doesn't read like your average booktube person, who doesn't read like your average person in the online bookish community, to pick up this book and read it in an afternoon, like sitting by the pool, lounging in their, their winter cabin, like wherever they are in that period of their life and that time, to get through this in a way it isn't like Babel, where maybe you're going to sit with it for a couple of weeks, or like the Poppy War trilogy, which is, maybe you're going to sit with that for a couple of days as well. Again, like on the first read, that mission is successful. But on the subsequent secondary read, it's a much slower paced book. And I feel like going through this book in a slower, and I say it's a slower paced book, and I read almost 200 pages of it in like an hour and a half. Make of that what you will, but I'm also just like a fast reader in general. So like I'm going to read a lot of pages, and maybe you are not also going to read a lot of pages in an hour and a half. It's just, it is what it is. I just think that this book reads slower on second read, and I don't think that that's a bad thing necessarily, but it definitely impacts the way that the story feels to the reader when that was not the way that it was designed to feel. Like it was designed to feel like I just can't keep up. I want to know more. And once you know things, and even I don't know it because again, like I read this book in January and we're in December. Like I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like every day I'm turning the page, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. But I will say that none of it feels new. Like I do often think of myself as a person with a bit of a goldfish memory. Like I'm not going to. It's just not giving that 5-star feeling. If anything, it's giving a 4-star feeling, like a four, maybe like a 4.25 if I really wanted to like kind of be gracious and like elevate it aside from the other 4-star books that I've read. So if you're still here, then that means that you don't mind me talking about The Summer Girl and maybe ruining it for you. So I started this book yesterday while I was at work, and I got about halfway through it. I started today listening in, and I was like 60 some odd percent. So I read a lot of this book yesterday. We're following Cassie, and we're following Tate. Tate is an Avalon Bay native. He's not a native. That's a complete lie. I just lied to you. He was actually from, I want to say somewhere further south. I want to say like Louisiana or Florida, but that could also be another lie that I'm trying to tell you. But he moved to Avalon Bay in his teens, like 10, 11, 12 years old. So like, that teen era. And then our main female character, Cassie, she was actually born in Avalon Bay, but her parents divorced when she was in her 10, like around 10 or so. And so she went to live with her mother in Boston. But she has occasionally come back to Avalon Bay to see her father, but this is the first time she's been back for an extended period of time in a few years. So she is going into her senior year of college. She's a junior, presently going into her senior year. She's there to spend the summer with her grandmother, who is selling her house. So her grandmother had lived in Avalon Bay for a really long time. They used to own this really great hotel, The Beacon, which is, spoiler alert, I guess, for the Good Girl complex. But at the end of that book, Mackenzie, she purchases the Beacon. She's going to restore it. And so in this book, Cassie's grandmother, she's already sold the hotel. She's trying to sell her house. She's older. She wants to go up to Boston to be near her grandchildren and her family because her husband is dead. So, her husband is dead. She doesn't own the hotel in town anymore. Like, there's not really anything necessarily linking her to this city, and it's not like her children come down to visit her. So she's like, I might as well go to where they are and enjoy, the rest of my elder years near my family. But she's here. So part of the book is like allegedly packing up her house and getting it ready for this, for selling it and moving, but we don't really get to see any of that. So much of this book really is Cassie and Tate being Cassie's wingman, because Cassie's gotten into her head that because she isn't really in Avalon Bay that long, she's going to go there, she's going to have a summer fling, she's going to lose her virginity, she's going to have a fun time, and she's going to go back to college in the fall. Obviously, this is a romance, and so like you can't just have like a fun summer fling. You're going to get locked down. You might get knocked up. That doesn't happen in this book, but it's a romance, so surprise pregnancy is a possibility. It's not a trope in this book, but like in theory. But she's just, here for a fun time, not a long time. And so we're watching her and Tate as they do this little dance of like, will they get together? Won't they get together? Cassie has like this estranged relationship with both of her parents. Her father still lives in Avalon Bay, so we get to see her interacting with her dad and her stepmother and the kids they have. And then we get to see Tate, who has like this picture perfect family, who's like doing everything, is all beautiful and perfect, and he's just living his little surfer boy life. Their relationship was fine. Like the moments between them, like the dates they went on was fine. Around the 60-70% mark, they started having a lot of sex. Like they were just really banging it out. And for the premise of the story about her looking for a summer fling and not anything serious, I feel like that was appropriate and it worked. But honestly, I did not care. I also feel like this is the book in the series where Elle Kennedy was just not at all like. It just felt like we were jumping through time at a certain point. Like once we got into the summer, it was just like a week went by, then a month went by, and then the summer was almost over. And I was like, ma'am, you actually chose to write 400 pages. And I don't really know if this book needed to be that long. I mean, usually y'all know me. I love a long romance, and there's some stuff happening, particularly with Tate's family. But at a certain point, I don't know. It just kind of felt like we were writing certain scenes to just have scenes in the book, and which is fine. Like I personally am all for their, writing scenes just to have them there. But at the same time, it was kind of like we're writing things for them to be there. And it's not so much that they don't need to be there, but it's just like, what are we doing here? Like so much of this, like so many of the scenes didn't really have anything like building up to them. It wasn't like, oh, we're building up to like a date. Or we're building up to like this big moment in their relationship or this milestone. It was just kind of like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. But again, like it wasn't bad. Like I didn't hate the book at any point during reading it. The only time I started to get a little bit suspicious was towards the third act. So in the late second act, going into the third act, Cassandra's mother appears in town. Cassandra's mother had been planning on returning to Avalon Bay because the hotel that Mackenzie purchased was going to be reopened at some point during the events of this book. They were getting close to it in the second book, and then in the third book, they had been working a really long time to get everything just picture perfect for the grand reopening. And so because Cassandra's grandmother had owned it, she was going to be invited to the grand reopening, and because Cassandra's mother had been told to the audience, the readers, as like this really narcissistic woman who is like low-key been abusive to her daughter over the years, she was going to, obviously appear in town and like kind of try and make the event about her, but she was, going to be present. But she arrived in town a few weeks earlier, and so we did get to see some of the interactions between Cassie and her mother. And Cassandra, this is the other part of the book that just is very strange to me. So when Cassie's mother appears in town, Victoria. So when Victoria appears in town, she kind of like flirts with Tate a little bit in their first meeting. And it was kind of like weird. It was giving weird. It was giving kind of like cougar. And it was kind of like, okay. And at that point, Tate and Cassie weren't necessarily dating one another. It's like, that wasn't weird. It was just kind of weird in that, like, I don't know why we needed to include this. But I kind of put it to the back of my mind. Victoria was not really a main character, even when she was in town. It was kind of more that Cassandra was on edge a little bit more because her mother was around, and she was just always waiting for this other shoe to drop because she knows her mom, and she knows that her mother is kind of like a lot. She doesn't really appreciate her mom. Like, they just don't get along or whatever. Again, for this alleged narcissism. And then as, her mother's still in town and she's there and she's present, we get to see like these other sides of her. So Cassandra, Victoria, and Tate all go out to dinner, and Victoria's really kind and she's just like, yeah, we're doing this. And Cassie is like, that was weird. My mother is never this kind. She's never this nice. And Tate's kind of like, well, you're the silver lining lady, maybe your mother is just like turning over a new leaf in her old age or something. And she's like, maybe, I don't really know. I'm not fully going to trust it. But we get to see them continuing on, and we're seeing their relationship. And Victoria is nothing at all like the woman that Cassandra described. And you're just kind of like, okay, maybe Tate was right. And she is turning over this new leaf. And like, maybe it was like an editing error in somewhere in there, where it's just like, maybe originally Victoria was going to be this horrible person, but now she's just kind of like, still like shades of that are showing through. Like that first interaction, she kind of body shames her daughter. It's kind of like, okay, like I can kind of see it. Like I believe that that's who she was. But, you know, again, like maybe because she's not really going to be present in this book, she's turning over a new leaf or whatever. Then we get to the end of the book. So there's a scene, I would say around the 80% mark. I don't really know because I was walking home from the store, where Cassandra's mom, Victoria reveals to her daughter that around the time that she was getting divorced from her husband, you know, Cassandra's dad, she suffered a miscarriage. And that was part of the reason that she was so controlling of her daughter growing up, was because she had this miscarriage, and she was getting this divorce. Her whole life was, you know, getting turned upside down, and she wanted some kind of control. And so like, it wasn't so much, when I was reading that, I was kind of like, okay, so Cassandra didn't lie to us. Like Cassandra's mother, Victoria, probably did all those horrible things. I mean, I didn't really think that Cassandra was lying, but it's kind of like, okay, maybe that wasn't so inconsistent. You know, like maybe the person that Cassandra told us Victoria did exist, but now, like Tate said, she's turning over this new leaf, and she's recognizing the behavior that her daughter hadn't had, and like maybe she just wants to have a better relationship with her child now. Who knows? All kinds of things are, you know, entirely in the realm of possibility. So we learned about this miscarriage, and I was like, that feels kind of fucked up to include it in that way, and to be like, I was so controlling because I had this miscarriage. But I could kind of also understand it, where it's like, again, like your entire life is in turmoil. This isn't the life you envisioned for yourself. And, you know, while it doesn't excuse anything, it does kind of explain why you would do those things. And so it's like, okay, it's kind of messy. It's not the world's greatest thing, but again, like so much of this series has been messy and like not really the best. And so many parents in romance novels that I've read lately are just like really bad, like just horrible people. They're just kind of like, okay, between this and Bad Girl Reputation, it was kind of nice to see a horrible parent kind of recognizing that they had been horrible, and like their child was reacting to them being horrible, and they wanted to fix that going forward. And then we got to the 96% mark of this book, and we got to see the shit hit the fan, and I was really annoyed. So in The Summer Girl, there is not a third act breakup in the traditional sense, because like I said, Cassandra wants to have a summer fling. She's not really into anything serious. And Tate has always been the town whore. Like all three of these books is about people who used to be the town whore, no longer being whores. And so Tate is, you know, our latest reformed whore. And he is like, you know, I used to just think with my dick, but now I'm thinking with my head. And he also loves her. But again, they agreed to be flings, and so they're not really going to go there. And they're going to, you know, just do what they need to do, go their own ways or whatever. But before they can do that, it is the night of the grand hotel reopening. And so everyone in town is there. All the people are there because, you know, they're supporting their local businesses. It's a big theme in the Avalon Bay book. And who shows up but Victoria? And Victoria, in her infinite wisdom, had kind of like sown the seeds for this altercation, because she invited Tate and made sure that Tate's parents were also going to be there, which kind of made sense. It didn't feel any nefariousness to me when that was in the book, because it's like everyone else is already going to be in town. Tate's dad owns the local marina, like the boat dealership, like they're a big boating town. It makes sense for him to be present at this, you know, grand reopening of the hotel. They're like natives at this, well, not natives at this point. They've been in town for like a long time. They're a part of the fabric of the community. Obviously, Tate's dad and family was already going to be there, but now they're invited by Cassandra's mom. So it's here that we learn that Cassandra and Tate's dad, I think his name is Garrett, they had an affair. They were fucking. He was shooting up the club when Cassie was a little girl. Because we know from earlier in the book that the miscarriage happened when Cassie was like 9. And so here we learn that, again, that Victoria and Garrett were clapping cheeks. They were having an affair with one another around the same time that the divorce was happening. And it's here that Victoria claims, in the middle of this grand hotel reopening, that Garrett wanted her to have an abortion. and was like pressuring her to get an abortion because he was this. I guess we're supposed to view him as like this, perfect family man, and he was pressuring her to get this abortion. And she just wanted to know. She just wanted, Garrett's family to know that he was that guy. Because earlier in the book, when she was present, he had been on the front page of the local newspaper because, of course, he was. And so she was like, "You wanted me to have an abortion. You cheated on your wife, and I think that's important to know." And the book vilifies Victoria for doing this at the hotel, and it's like, see, she really is this narcissistic woman. She really is like this vindictive, horrible person. And honestly, I don't think Victoria was in the wrong here, because honestly, I think one, this was a stupid thing to introduce at the 96% point. Like, this was just, we were on fucking crack. Like, to do this, we were on crack. But also, for me personally, once you've told me that two characters almost share a sibling, I do not want to see them get married. I do not want to see them continue to be in a relationship. I don't want to see them looking at each other in any kind of romantic way. So this is like, you just can't do it. I'm sorry. You just can't have characters sharing a sibling and then want me to root for them to be together in any kind of sexual capacity. But what breaks them up, what breaks up Cassie and Tate isn't even the fact that, all of this. It's that Tate's mom realized, she knew that her husband had an affair, but she didn't know who with. And so when she finds out that it was with Victoria, and Victoria is Cassie's mom, she's like, I can't see you dating Cassie because I'm just going to think about Victoria and it's going to hurt me. And so they decide they can't be together for that particular reason, with only 2 chapters left in the book, only for in the very next chapter for Tate's mother, Gemma, to realize that actually I was wrong for that. I shouldn't do that. And I really want you to go be with my son. So actually go be with him. One, that is just an insane thing to do from one chapter to the next, but okay. But ultimately, it's just like, Gemma in this book, the person who was actively cheated on by Tate's father, is portrayed as being in the know. She knew about this. She knew that her husband was a cheater. She just didn't know who. And so I can understand, like, knowing who could change things. And again, I do think it'd be very strange to know that my son is with the daughter of the woman that my husband cheated on me with. I think that would be very weird, even if Cassie and her mother already had a strained relationship going, before this. And so after this, and she's like really upset with her mother and calling her all kinds of sluts and whores in her mind. She's not really doing that, but like disparaging this woman and shitting on her for everything she's ever, again, like her mother was abusive. So like, I don't think they need to be besties, but I don't think it's crazy for a woman who, sees this man being applauded as like this great family man and a pillar of his community to come back to town, and her life has been shit. Like her entire, like, it's not like, she left her first husband and it's been sunshine and rainbow. She's been like married and divorced 3 other times, I think, since then. Like her life she doesn't seem very happy with her life. So I can understand like a woman like, and maybe it's just because I read so many unhappy women in the books that I tend to read outside of the romance genre, when I'm just like, reading my complicated women books. But like, I can see that woman, I can see Victoria coming back to town, seeing this man who was still with the wife that, he was with when he was having this affair, being lauded as this pillar of the community, this great family man, smiling on the front page of a newspaper, and going, you know what, I'm going to start some shit today. And I'm going to air his dirty laundry. I'm going to air my dirty laundry. And maybe she, embellished the truth. Garrett says that he didn't try and pressure her into having an abortion, but he was like, I definitely didn't want to have the baby. I definitely didn't want her to have the baby. So it's like, I don't think she's lying. I don't think she was necessarily lying about that. And so even though she was abusive to Cassie, I understand her point, and I was not on board for this being the great villain moment that Elle Kennedy wanted me to see it as. I thought Gemma was dumb for being like, actually, now that I know who it is, I don't want my son to be with you. Actually, wait a second, I do want him to be with you. It was just a little bit too deeply unserious. It was giving too much crack. It was giving Lifetime, and not in a good way. So I really do hate that for me and for the culture. And this, I don't know if there's going to be any more books set in this town. I would read them because I do like the town. I like the characters that live in the town. But me knowing that you know, but for the grace of God, Tate and Cassie would be out here sharing siblings. I can't root for them. I cannot root for that romance. I'm sorry. I spent this entire book being like, oh, this is cute. This would be fun for them. I like this for them. But knowing that they were literally like 8 months away from, you know, hey, little bro, it's not for me. I understand that there are plenty of books out there where people are out here fucking their stepdad and stepmothers and step siblings. I get that. I get it. I understand that people love a little life with Derek Smut, but it's not for me. It's not in my ministry. So at the end of the day, I don't know what I'm rating this book, but the ending of this, for me, it just completely fell off the rails. So nothing higher than a 2. Nothing higher than a 2. Of the 3 books in the series, I think probably Bad Girl Reputation is my favorite, but that's just because I read Good Girl Complex so long ago. And I only give that book 3 stars as well. So it's not like it's much worse than Bad Girl. But I think that the first 2 in this book are definitely the strongest, and this should have been kind of like that Ballinger sisters, where it's a duet. We got the Hartley brothers, and that would have been fine. And then this whole Tate and Cassie situation, nobody needs to read it. So those are my thoughts. Let me know down below if you started anything today, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another video. Until then, and until next time.